Hello again. We are going to finish attaching the fur to our puppet, which I have already done. I've attached the fur and I've put some fleece in his mouth. Okay, we're going to cut out the fur to go on the back of the puppet now. I use towel material for the fur of the puppet just because it's easier to work with and it's so much more forgiving when you start to actually do your sewing. So this one's a little tricky because you're starting out with two pieces, but you're going to be cutting out this big piece, and this is how you're going to do it. All right, you're going to take this piece first, the fabric body. When you cut the two pieces out, it's going to say fabric body 1 and fabric body 2. And you want to tape those two together so that you have a piece that looks like this. So when you lay it onto your fabric material, flip it over this way so that this little notched edge is towards you. And you're going to lay that down, and like we did with the foam, use your Sharpie to go around and outline this pattern piece. When you're finished doing that, you're going to take this pattern piece and just flip it over so that it's like that. So you've got your first piece here, and now this is the second piece. Now before you outline that piece, we want to make sure it lines up properly. So get your nose fabric pattern piece and place that along the first pattern piece where you traced it out there. And then line up the second piece so that everything is kind of touching like that. And then use your Sharpie and outline everything as one piece because you're going to cut it out as one piece. Okay, so I've got it all laid out here. And now I'm going to cut it out, and we'll have one piece, and this one piece is going to lay over the body of the puppet. So I've got my back body fur done. On one side, you can see my markings on there, so we want to make sure that that goes on the inside of the puppet. What I'm going to do right now is, let me show you how it lays on the puppet. Here's your puppet that you made already. I'll lay it down with the head part up, and the fur is going to lay over the top of it like this, leaving a little bit at the top so that you'll be able to fold it over the mouth when you're finished sewing it. And yes, we're going to be sewing today. Fold this over like this with the markings, which are going to go on the inside. So this is the inside of the fur. And I'm just going to pin it together for now, and trust me, we will end up having to trim this. But for now, we're just going to put a few pins in it, just so we can figure out how it lays on the puppet correctly. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for the moment. Now, the chest fabric, you only need one. You only have to cut one of these. We're just going to outline it with our Sharpie. You can use a pencil for this if you want, if you're using light fabric. I like the Sharpie because the ink isn't going to show anyway after I sew it together. Okay, so got that, and I'll cut that out. Okay, so I've got my chest piece here, and the chest piece is going to go over the belly like so. And it's going to go up underneath the jaw plate. So there's your mouth with the jaw plate, and this is going to go up underneath the jaw plate. And you want to leave a little bit extra so that you'll be able to fold it under. Okay, so that's where our chest piece is going to go. So now we want to sew the chest piece to the back fabric. Alright, so I've got my back piece on. Alright, so let's get our back piece that we kind of put together there. I'm just going to tentatively pin it in place here on top of the head, just so it doesn't move around too much and I can work with it. So I'm going to use a nice big quilting pin to hold that down in just a couple places. Again, don't forget to make sure you've got a little bit extra here because you're going to need to be able to fold it over to cover that foam up. Alright, so we've got that back pinned on there. Before we sew any of that on, we want to sew the chest piece to the sides of the back. So we're going to do the same thing with the chest piece, give myself some room to cover it up with, and I'm just going to pin this down so it's not sliding around. All right. Okay, so very simply, we're just going to do a simple stitch, a simple straight stitch, and attach these pieces together, starting up here with the jawbone. Okay, so we're just going to match up where the chest has a point on the side to where the back does its little curve right there. Can you see that, where it's curving? And I'm going to match this point to the curve. And that's going to end up being right under the jawbone. Alright, so let's just kind of pin this together so we can get a general idea if we're going in the right direction. Pretty close. That side pinned together. I'm going to pull it over and pin it to the other side. Again, this little pointy part there is going to match up with that curve. Okay, now we've got it all pinned together. We've got the chest piece pinned to the back piece and the back piece pinned. Our puppet is going to look like that. So you're just going to do a simple hand stitch all the way down each seam. Do the front seams first, the chest to the back, and then when you get to the back you can cut away to make it fit just perfectly, nice and snug. Okay, so we've got the sides of the chest and the body sewn on. And now I'm going to sew the back. I want to make it snug. I want to make this fur nice and snug over it. So, okay, so I'm going to pull these two pieces together so that it's snug. And then I'm going to pick my puppet up and bend it just so I can check the snugness of it. And I want to trim away some of this excess. And it's always good when you're cutting out your pattern to leave a little bit of excess because you can always cut away, but it's hard to add in. So it's better to have too much than not enough. So I'm going to trim this up, leaving maybe an inch for when I sew it together. Okay, so now it's going to be a little snugger. Is that a word? Snugger? Alright. To sew this together, and this is why I love this kind of fabric, because it's made up of all these little threads. So when you're actually sewing, it's very forgiving and you can't see mistakes. So I'm going to tuck in both sides just a little bit on both ends and pull them together. Like so. So I'll have it together just like that. And then I'm just going to go in and stitch these together. Again, you won't be able to see the thread because of the terry cloth type material, if you're using the right color, that is. While you're pulling these two pieces together, kind of pull them snug on the puppet so that his fur will lay snug against his skin, the foam. Okay, so I've got the back sewn together. Okay, so our back is sewn together now. And I'm just going to trim the bottom. This is hanging over a little bit, so I'm going to trim that off. Later on, we can go back and we can either hot glue the pieces down or sew it down, whichever you prefer. So there you've got the belly done, and the back is done, and the fur is now sewn on to the puppet. Okay, so now we're going to use our hot glue gun and glue the edges down around the mouth plate. Put some hot glue around the edges of the fur. And I'm going to fold that over so that it covers. Very hot glue. So you're just folding it in like that all the way around. You just got the top tacked down. Now I'm going to do the jaw part. And this is going to get tacked down right there. And just kind of fold it in there. Squish the foam inside. Don't touch the hot glue like I did because it's hot, which is why they call it a hot glue gun. This part gets a little hairy. That's a ha-ha funny because we're dealing with the fur. I know, terrible jokes I have. Just pull it up in there. Hold it down. Kind of squeeze his jaw together. Okay. That's one side. I know it doesn't look very pretty right now, but again, we're going to cover it with this mouth plate piece of fabric. Okay. So now we've got the body fur on the puppet. There we go, and we've got the corners all glued down, and now we're going to put the mouthpiece in the mouth, and that will cover up all of those edges. And we're just going to hot glue that right on there. And what I recommend is put your glue actually on the edges here rather than putting it on the piece of fleece or felt, whatever you're using. That way, once you get it where you want it, you can go back and trim it so that it fits in there properly. Okay. All right, so just on the edge of that fabric, I'm going to add my hot glue, and then I'm going to lay my piece of fleece in here. Starting at the top, kind of fold it in there, press it down. See, now all those edges are covered up. And now you can go back along here and trim it up. I'm sure yours will be much prettier than mine because you're probably working slower than I am. Hopefully. Okay, so I've trimmed it all around there. Okay, now I've got a puppet mouth. And you can go back in with your scissors after everything is dry. I've got a little excess glue right there, so I'm just going to kind of snip that off. And there you go. Puppet. There is your puppet with the fur and a mouth. Come back on the next video. I'm going to show you how to attach the puppet's ears and eyes and nose, and we're going to put some arms and hands on. See you later.